Donald Trump is not happy as the Canadians are doubling down on their trade war shenanigans with extra ads based around the World Series and the trade relationship, one of which featuring one of Donald Trump's largest political enemies. Yeah, let's make baseball all about politics instead of just enjoying the game. But the mainstream media and almost all of Canada's politicians are supporting Doug Ford and cheering him on, saying they want to do the same thing. There's only been two people who I've seen call this out directly who have mainstream voices that I was surprised to see, especially since Canada now views the United States as more of an enemy and a danger than China. We are in a complete bizarro world when it comes to economics and trade, and they won't call out the real problems that are happening in Canada today, right now. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
Breaking right now, Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he is pulling an ad featuring Ronald Reagan, an ad that prompted President Trump to end trade talks with Canada. Ford says, quote, "I've directed my team to keep putting our message in front of Americans over the weekend so that we can air our commercial during the first two World Series games."
That'll be good. Let's keep doubling down on the division when it comes to us getting a trade deal with the United States. It's not like Canada's entire economy is on the line.
Doesn't sound exact. Says, in speaking with Prime Minister Carney, Ontario will pause its U.S. advertising campaign effective Monday so that trade talks can resume. So it doesn't sound like he's immediately pulling the ad, Sandra. It sounds like he's going to put it in the first couple of games of the World Series when there's going to be a big audience, and then pull it on Monday. I've texted him to see if we can get a little more background on all of this. So
we'll go over why he's getting so emboldened.
Give a response.
He will respond to a good Canadian like yourself. I mean, it's a remarkable update to the story. I wonder why Monday, John?
Well, again, he wants to get it in front of a lot of eyeballs this weekend before.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a finger in the eye here.
Little bit of a finger in the eye. If that's a little bit of a finger in the eye, this to me seems like it's probably a lot of bit of a finger in the eye. He decided to run an ad with Gavin Newsom, who is doing everything he can to subvert Trump, to annoy Trump, to be anti-Trump. So even when it comes to Trump's own domestic trade policy, everything he's doing, I cannot think of a worse person. And I understand it's the Dodgers. They're out of LA. So of course he's going to do it with the governor there. But the fact is, you didn't have to do this at all, or at the very least, you could have not mentioned the things that you mentioned.
Hi, Governor Newsom. It's official. The Blue Jays are heading to the World Series to take on your Los Angeles Dodgers.
That's right, Premier. Two great teams, two proud places. Sounds like a perfect time for a friendly wager.
Okay, Governor, you're on. If the Blue Jays win, I'll send you some of Ontario's finest maple syrup in a proper tin can, the way it's meant to be enjoyed. The tariff might cost me a few extra bucks at the border these days, but it'll be worth it for a Jays win.
Who am I to tell Doug, the liberal slug who stinks like a pug, Chub Ford himself, how to enjoy his maple syrup? I've lived in Canada my entire life, outside of a brief stint in, Japan. And so I have to wonder, and any of the older Canadians who are watching this, or Americans, have you guys heard that you have to enjoy maple syrup out of a tin can? Am I the one who doesn't know this? Maybe I don't. Maybe it's an ongoing thing. I've just personally never heard it. Maybe it's real.
That's a sweet offer, Premier, but something tells me that syrup is staying north of the border when the Dodgers win. And when they do, I'll send you a bottle of California's championship-worthy wine. And hey, can you do me a favor? Think you can put it on the liquor store shelves?
I don't think so, buddy. Talk to your friend in the Oval Office. I can't wait for the Jays to bring it home. Either way, it's a win-win. Great neighbors, great friends, and a little cross-border competition.
Well, couldn't agree.
2 weeks ago, he literally said he was going to cut off power to New York with a smile on his face. So,
More. Here's to great baseball and some friendly bragging rights.
Go Jays.
As a lifelong San Francisco Giants fan, go Dodgers. Here's to a great World Series and a tariff-free friendship between Ontario and California.
Look, I want a great trade relationship too. We know we're big Fortress America, Mount Up Patriots, Donald Trump fans on the channel. But I don't know if these two nerds are necessarily the ones who are going to bring that relationship together. But the reason why Doug Ford is doubling down on this, and we've got a ton of examples of the mainstream media continues to justify all of Doug Ford's actions, including saying that Canadians have a really mature outlook on the Premier's ad and that it was a good thing. Okay, let's get into this.
Talks remain stalled between the U.S. and Canada following Doug Ford's ads. Want to bring in CTV News political commentator Scott Reed to the conversation. Morning, Scott.
Good morning.
Let's get into this, shall we, too? Doug Ford saying he is going to pull these ads after a conversation with the Prime Minister at some point yesterday, but not before letting them air for a couple of World Series games in the United States. What do you make of this latest hurdle, this latest drama that's, again, affecting trade relations?
So, by the way, bit of context on this guy. Super liberal, horrible TDS. And I don't think I've ever agreed with one of his analysis of the situation, but he's probably getting paid a ton of money from CTV to be one of their political analysts. So there you go.
Yeah, it really underlines how ridiculous, how unpredictable, unreliable Donald Trump is. I mean, the fact that he takes umbrage at an ad and then he has to lie about the ad, then he stamps his foot like a 5-year-old and knocks off the trade talk. So, you know what? Run the
Yeah, that'll work. Call him a 5-year-old and say he's throwing a tantrum. That'll help.
ad during the World Series. Give the guy a tweak. It's nice to see us. I don't know if it's elbows up, but at least an elbow to his ribs, and then pull them down, and we can get back to trade talks. Because as we know with Donald Trump, trade talks are off one day, they're on the next.
But basically, here we have this very smart political analyst, and his entire argument just sort of boils down to name calling. Okay, great. I'm glad that we brought him on, especially since I've not seen one mainstream Canadian news talking head mention at all that the United States government, not just Donald Trump, their head economic advisors, a bunch of consultants all said, look, this has been an ongoing frustration that we've had trying to get a deal with Canada. This has been a long time coming. It's a buildup of frustrations. This just crossed the line in their opinion, and we can see that obviously some political consultant somewhere told them that this is reading well for Canadians. And I'm not going to lie, guys, from general conversation I've had plus online sentiment, right now I have 2 people that I'm arguing with online that are saying that Doug Ford's ads were a good thing and that Mark Carney is crushing it as Prime Minister, that you just can't deal with Trump. There's just no way to get a deal with him. So somehow every other country's been able to get deals with the United States. But because Donald Trump is just stamping his foot and acting like a 5-year-old, according to our very, very smart political analysts, we just can't get a deal in Canada. Oh, that's the reason. It has nothing to do. Canada refuses to take any level of responsibility when we have Wab Canoe, who's also a big old dweeb, running his own mock ad to the ad in support of Doug Ford. So this is another premier, another governor, if you will, saying that he supports the ads and what Doug Ford's doing.
My fellow Manitobans, Ontario's TV ads present Ronald Reagan's views on tariffs accurately and powerfully.
To say accurate is a lie. To say powerfully, subjective, I guess. But we know they were taken out of context and they omitted information, so certainly not accurate.
President Trump's damaging tariffs go completely against Mr. Reagan's legacy. And it's clear that these ads are working. If you throw a rock at a lake and you don't hear a splash, you've probably missed. So to my good friend Doug Ford, keep the ads on TV. They're effective, and this country is behind you.
The reason why I'm showing all of these examples so that Canadians can take a second to realize this is not necessarily a minority view in Canada. There are lots of average, everyday Canadians who believe this, who are cheering on Doug Ford. I can't believe it. Most of conservatives obviously do not. And there are a lot, I would say millions of Canadians who do not agree with this at all. But the fact is, this is more than just a niche amount. It's obviously polling high and it's not helpful. It's just destructive because look at what Donald Trump's reaction was. He obviously is not happy to hear all this stuff.
Well, you know, it's a crooked ad. I heard he's airing it. Canada, that's why I pulled everything. With Canada, they did a crooked ad. They knew it was Ronald Reagan loved tariffs. What they did is really dishonest. And I heard they were pulling the ad. I didn't know they were putting it on a little bit more. They could have pulled it tonight. Well, that's dirty playing. But I can play dirtier than they can, you know?
When he says he can play dirtier than Canada can, what he means is he holds all of the cards. And somehow the Canadian mainstream media is politicizing all of this to such a degree where the Blue Jays aren't just playing for themselves because of Trump, they're playing for all of Canada. So So these are the mainstream news articles that we get. We can't just have sports anymore. We can't just have dudes in tight pants whacking a ball with a stick. What we gotta have is a geopolitical discussion about the trade war on these two countries because of whacking a ball with a stick. And of course, we know the Blue Jays are very, very patriotic, so obviously they're standing up to Trump. Why don't we do a quick check-in to see how many Blue Jays are actually Canadian? Well, we've got Toronto Blue Jays have just one Canadian player. His name is Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who wasn't even raised in Canada. He was born in Canada to immigrant parents and basically never lived here. So the only Canadian we have on the Blue Jays is basically not Canadian, right? And somehow the Blue Jays are representing Canada in the World Series. Look, you want to cheer for the Blue Jays because they're your team. They're the only Canadian baseball team. Absolutely. Even if you actually do enjoy the Canada-US rivalry in sports. Absolutely. But the idea that the Blue Jays are fighting to take on Trump is so nonsense and needs to be nipped in the bud early because we are distracted and not calling out the real problems. Like, let's see, TD lays off staff and staggers return to office dates for some workers. So one of Canada's largest banks, one of the backbones to Canadian society, if you've watched my other videos, you know I'm not a big fan of the big five banks. So this is supposed to be a Canadian institution standing up for Canada. They're laying off Canadians in the hundreds to the thousands, and nobody's talking about this like it's a problem. Somehow it's only a problem when we lose 300 jobs at a truck manufacturing facility that is an American company that sells into the US, but when we have Canadian companies who continue to lay off hundreds to thousands of Canadians so that they can make record profits. And in the article, they say, oh, part of the reason they got to do the layoffs is to make up for some of the fines that they paid in the United States for the money laundering and the illegal actions that they did. But we know we are run by nonsense merchants because we have even more articles supporting Doug Ford, and liberal Canadians see this, they slurp it up without questions. Ontario's anti-tariff ad is clever, effective, and legally sound, expert says. Oh, okay. So let's double down on that. It's continuing to work for Canada. Did you guys miss this? Because I did. I cover this stuff. And this is from October 17th, and tariffs force Holseg's closure in March of next year. So yes, this is another company that's been manufacturing in Canada for 35 years that's now leaving. They're going back down to Utah. It will be decimating to the small town that it's from, because it is from a very small town where the manufacturing is, headed back down to the US because we can't get a deal with the United States and we continue to be antagonistic. But we're actually really winning this because we know how to do business in Canada. How do we do business? Well, we do it right here, of course. We issue $4 million loans to companies in Quebec because that's how you take on America.
The federal government is lending $4 million to 4 companies in Sherbrooke looking to expand and increase productivity.
I'm here in a very important region of Quebec, working with my colleagues, working with local businesses, because we need to make sure that we reduce our dependency on the U.S. and that we support our businesses as they have very important workforces and they have very important decisions to take.
As we continue to lose private capital investment in Canada, as money floods out of Canada, even with Canadian investors taking their money outside of Canada, they think that we make ourselves more competitive and we make ourselves able to take on the United States by using taxpayer dollars to fund private companies, and that's our competitive edge. Hey, guess what? That's one of the issues that America has with Canada. That's what China does to make their products more competitive so that they can undercut markets and then become the only supplier for their products. But sure, Canada, more public spending is how we're going to take on the US, and this was the surprising call out here. We had Yves Francois Blanchet, the French dweeb himself, calling out the nonsense that these mainstream media that the mainstream media keeps talking about, that the other politicians keep talking about. I don't even know if I've seen Pierre say it's nonsense to think that we can replace the United States and we should not even be talking about diversifying with China. So the fact that he's saying, whatever he may say, China cannot replace the USA in terms of trade, nor can we ignore the fact that it is a brutal dictatorship that enslaves the Tibetan Uyghur peoples, suppresses Hong Kong, threatens Taiwan, and resorts to forced labor and child labor. There is no possible moral justification for Quebec and Canada not to add their voice and law to counter these serious violations by China without giving up legitimate trade with China, but with a clear-eyed view of its real potential. Doug Ford has put Quebec and Canada in a difficult position, but the answer is not to replace the USA with something even worse. I cannot believe that he's the only federal leader who is saying it that clearly and that succinctly, and that's why I was so surprised. Speaking of China and Canadian sentiment, Ellie Canton-Nantel said Canadians now view the United States, a democracy and ally of Canada, oh, and by the way, we share the largest land border in the world, as a bigger enemy than communist China, an authoritarian regime that jails Canadians and commits genocide because Trump? This is your brain on nonstop legacy media, the slot merchants themselves, and this is Trump derangement syndrome on full display. We can see right here, we have China and the United States beside each other. This red bar is enemy and potential threat, and we have the United States at 46% and China at 34%. Yeah, that makes sense, liberal Canadians. That totally makes sense. And I was surprised again as well to see, I've mentioned him a few times on the channel because this is JJ McCullough. He is a Canadian YouTuber who definitely is considered left-wing. He's very moderate, and that's why I've tried to connect with him a few times. He's never answered any of my messages because maybe he's too big for me. I respect the fact that even though he's clearly a left-wing liberal Canadian, he's open to these ideas and understanding, hey, maybe it's not all one-sided. And he put out this tweet here, and I think he articulated this pretty well. The fact is, other countries have dealt with Trump better than Canada. Some of this is because of their pain from tariffs has been less acute, which has made them less frantic. Exactly. Canada is frantic. But a lot of it is because Canadian culture, this is important, we've talked about this many times on the channel, is uniquely disordered when it comes to US-related things. Hating Trump is good domestic politics in Canada because of how interconnected our political cultures are. Canadian politicians want to act like blue state Democrats and reap the rewards. Canadian anti-Americanism also means there is not a loud constituency for good US relations, and that's why I do what I do, because we need to be a loud constituency for US-Canada relations in a positive way, because as much as Canadians with an inferiority complex who just spiral in the corner as secret, like if they just knew how powerful and strong we were in Canada, the United States wouldn't mess with us. Relax. We want to be friends. It'll be fun. It'll be good. It all comes down to domestic Canadian politics and Canadians being that brainwashed by the politicians and the mainstream media that they think America is not our friend. They think America is an enemy. I've proved on this channel many times the anti-American sentiment in Canada is real. And I just talked about it with a friend today, actually, how tragic it is that Americans are so welcoming. They are so warm to Canadians. They are so positive to Canada on average. And yet Canadians behind their back, because they will never say it to their face, will make fun of them, have a superiority complex, and feel like they're the secret kings in the relationship and they're so much better than Americans. Canadians who love America and Canada should call out our fellow Canadians who are anti-America, because when you are anti-America, you are choosing to destroy Canada. You break down the relationship between the two countries and you burn down the goodwill of the Americans who like Canada. And so we know we need to get us working together. I want the two countries to be best friends, build Fortress America, and stay the strongest economic zone in the entire world. We'd be untouchable. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.